Just wanted to briefly introduce the program today. Obviously, we're going to be looking at the landscape of the sports betting industry in Australia. Leah Purdy, our Senior Client Advisor, is going to take us through today's session. And just want to make you aware that this is our second year running in the program. That's in Australia, and we've been running for 3 years in the UK and Ireland. And this year we're actually introducing the mobile sales effectiveness, which is a review of the mobile web experiences that consumers are having with sports betting brands across Australia. I think we've chewed into some of the time, so I'll save my spiel towards the end and let Leah get on with the insights to share with the team. All right, thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. As Shane mentioned, we're going to be having a look at the sports betting industry in Australia through the lens of our Digital Marketing Effectiveness Study, or the DME as we'll refer to it today. So we'll have a quickly just tell you a little bit about who we are at Global Reviews, revisit our research methodology, look at some top-level metrics, and then we're going to focus on two specific topics. So debut performances. There's obviously a few new brands in the market, and we're going to have a look at the impact that they're having and how they're performing. And then leveling the playing field. So what's driving these changes in the market at the moment, and as a market leader, how can you maintain your share, or as a challenger or tier 2 brand, how can you manipulate what's happening in order to grow your share? Okay, so Global Reviews, we're a digital consumer analytics and competitor intelligence provider. We operate in several markets, not just Australia, and that really enables us to identify trends and best practice across multiple markets. We were founded in the year 2000, so we have 15 years experience benchmarking the online experience and identifying trends. So really what we do is we're providing insights that you don't normally get from your analytics. So enabling you, providing that competitive view to help you benchmark and understand where you sit in the overall industry. We're also about partnering with our clients to help drive their optimization and digital experience programs, providing those actionable recommendations to help you increase your conversion rates. So we work with clients across acquisition, increasing member engagement, lifetime value, cross-sell, etc., and really about increasing the value and revenue driven through digital. Some of the clients we work with both here and in Europe, so we're strong not only in the sports betting industry, but as I mentioned, across financials, telcos, utilities, etc. And again, this helps us to understand best practice across multiple industries and potentially take insights that are working in other industries to help improve your program. Okay, so at Global Reviews, we're fortunate that we look across the whole customer journey, so not just looking at conversion rates in isolation or brand awareness, but how the different stages tie in together. Today we're going to be focusing on our Digital Marketing Effectiveness Study, and this covers the first two phases of the journey. So discover if someone decides that they'd like to place a bet, are they aware of your brand? What are their feelings towards your brand? And are they going to consider researching you further? Consider is about the on-site experience that you're providing them and how that impacts their desire to place a bet with you. So consider looks at the online experience. How can they find out more about you? Can they find you, etc.? The second study that we run is the Digital Sales Effectiveness, or DSE, and we are going to touch on this slightly today. And again, this does overlap with the Digital Marketing Effectiveness Study, but also then looks at, once they do decide to transact on your website, how easy or difficult are you making it for them compared to your competitors. And finally, we won't touch on it today, but we also do a lot of work with our clients in terms of retention and their member strategy. Okay, so we have 4 key inputs. For the DME, we're focusing on 2. So customer behaviour, this is looking at, we monitor and track their behaviour when they're researching someone to place a bet online with. The second one is customer attitude. So this is survey data where we ask them what their preferences are, how satisfied they were about the experience. And with the DME, we have studies in market monthly. So we're looking at 2,400 users annually. For the DSE, we're also looking at these two inputs, but we also look at a customer audit, so understanding what is most important to customers when they're researching online, and also our best practice audit, which has been developed over many, many years, and it's a series of approximately 500 best practice criteria that we recommend you providing in order to give a great online experience. Okay, so we'll quickly look at some top-level industry results. So the DME is all about understanding what their journey is and how people research online when they're looking to place a bet. But ultimately what we're looking to understand is who their final preference would be and who they would choose to place their bet with online. Here we're looking at the results for June, and you can see there that Sportsbet are really dominating the market with 41% of final preferences. With the digital sales effectiveness, we look at the online experience overall, looking at things such as your initial engagement, how can they register online, and from your website experience, we give an overall score. These are the overall scores for Q1 of this year, and again you can see that Sportsbet are leading the way, and as we go through today we'll get an understanding of how this does impact the first one, final preferences. It really helps them drive success online. As I mentioned, we look at multiple industries, and here we're looking at the industry average scores for the digital sales effectiveness study. And this gives us a good understanding of how your industry performs in the overall market and which industries we can learn from. So here we can see that the UK sports betting industry is leading the way, and sports betting as a whole doing very, very well. We've had an increase in scores for the AU market, which is great to see. And also there you can see MSE, which is our mobile sales effectiveness study, which we will be running in Australia later this year. And also the next DSE for Australia will be running in August. So please do get in touch if you'd like to be a part of that. Okay, so let's jump in. So now we're going to look at how the new entrants are performing in the market. As we know, there's been a significant amount of change in the industry over the past 12 months, and what we want to know is how these brands are performing. So first we're going to look at unprompted brand recall. When our participants start the study, we ask them to name the top 5 sports betting companies that come to mind. And this really helps us to identify who's top of mind and who's most likely to be in the consideration set. So the data we're looking at here is June 2014, May 2015 and June 2015. So essentially our most recent data compared month on month and year on year. So here we can see that Sportsbet and Tab dominating brand recall. After a bit of a dip in May, Sportsbet and Tab have really started to regain share. Sportsbet with their live streaming and their offers really performing very well. Some new brands, so Ladbrokes, William Hill, CrownBet and UBet starting to make traction and really be top of mind in consumers' minds, which is great. However, year on year, we have seen decreases for Tom Waterhouse, Bet365, Sportingbet and Centrebet. Just having a look at the different groups now and how the new brands are performing. So over a short period of time, the CrownBet brand performing really well and has met the same recall as Betfair. And we predict that, with a strong backing of Crown in Australia, that the CrownBet brand will only increase in coming months. UBet, after just 1 month in market, performing really well, and we anticipate that in the July study that UBet will have actually overtaken the TatsBet brand. The William Hill Group, bit of an interesting one here. So we can see that in July last year, the Tom Waterhouse brand was recalled by 33% of our participants, and we've seen that drop off significantly since the William Hill brand was introduced. So whilst the William Hill brand is gaining traction, the other three brands are decreasing in recall faster than William Hill is growing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there in the coming months. Now just looking at the market leaders, so fluctuating quite a lot throughout the year, but in the last few months where there has been a lot of consolidation, we can see that Sportsbet and Tab have increased, so really taking advantage of that space in the market. Okay, so given the amount of marketing dollars spent in the industry, it's important to understand how does that relate and how does that push preferences in the market. So before our participants start researching, we ask them who they feel they would be most likely to place a bet with at that point in time. So this enables us to get an understanding of how the research phase impacts that and how it changes over time. So here we're looking at the initial preferences over the same period of time, and just going to overlay that with awareness so we can get an understanding of the relationship. So you can see here that William Hill is starting to gain share. After 4 months in market, William Hill has had a similar initial preference to Ladbrokes. After 4 months in market, William Hill is receiving similar initial preferences to Ladbrokes, and despite having the 4th highest brand awareness, which you can see here, Ladbrokes is suffering from a low initial preference at this stage. On the other hand, CrownBet has quite low brand awareness, but has already surpassed Ladbrokes in terms of initial preferences for June this year after 3 months in market. So typically when people decide to place a bet, there will be a few brands that they'll consider. And so what we ask our participants is to let us know which brands that they considered, because obviously if you're not in the consideration set, then there is limited room for growth. So new brands ultimately are being considered. They are gaining traction with the market. We can see here William Hill was shortlisted 20% of the time, and CrownBet also doing quite well. While Ladbrokes wasn't initially preferred, they are the 3rd most considered brand. So it's a huge opportunity there for Ladbrokes to really make an impact during the research phase and gain those preferences. So essentially the new brands are doing really well. They are making the consideration set, and it's just about how we look at those different strategies to make sure that we're getting the final preferences. You can see there also that Sportsbet and TAB, their initial preferences, their consideration is dropping off slightly. What we're seeing is quite minimal at this stage, but people are starting to shortlist slightly fewer brands in the sports betting industry, and this is consistent with what we've seen in other industries. So as brands start to offer more and more benefits and potentially become commoditized in the market, people are becoming more impatient and looking at fewer brands. So it is going to be increasingly more difficult to cut through. So finally, after our participants have researched multiple brands, we ask them who their final preference is. And as we can see here, Sportsbet is really dominating in the June study. So they've had 8% growth year on year, now holding 41% of the market. Between the two of them, Sportsbet and TAB, they now hold 69% of all final preferences, and that's up by 10% year on year. Here, just highlighting, Sportingbet did hold the third largest amount of final preferences in June last year, and William Hill not making that up at this point in time. So Sportsbet does appear to be the biggest beneficiary of that brand consolidation at this point. One of the great metrics that we have at Global Reviews is the lost opportunity, and this is being used by a lot of our e-commerce teams as a KPI. So essentially, this looks at the amount of brands that shortlisted you but went on to finally choose another brand. So on the previous slide, we saw that Sportsbet and TAB have increased their final preferences, and this has resulted in them holding on to more of that opportunity and their lost opportunity dropping year on year, month on month. CrownBet are also starting to become more sticky with people considering them. So you can see there that their lost opportunity again has dropped a month on month. On the flip side of that, William Hill and Ladbrokes, their lost opportunity is quite high. So almost everyone who considers William Hill and Ladbrokes does go on to choose another brand. One of the great things about our study is that we're not only able to understand what is happening, but also why. And when we have a look at the people who considered William Hill and Ladbrokes, but went on to choose another brand, the main reasons they stated for that was because they trusted the brand that they chose, and also that they had a previous relationship with them. So as new brands coming into the market, it is going to be difficult to really break through those existing relationships in the market, and trust really needs to be a key focus. Okay, so now we're going to look at levelling the playing field and how and why these changes are happening between the different brands. So just a bit of a trend here. So as I mentioned, Sportsbet and TAB hold 69% of the final preferences within this market, and 10% year-on-year growth, and that has increased by 13% from August. So the market is shifting towards the tier one players, so it's really important that the smaller players really start to gain more traction before it comes a two-horse race. Okay, so as we mentioned, challenger brands are making the shortlist, but really need to perform better throughout the research phase so that we're not losing those final preferences to TAB and Sportsbet. So 41%, and this is looking at April through June this year, initially preferred Sportsbet or TAB. 14% did not have an initial preference. As we mentioned, challenger brands are making the shortlist, so a third of our participants considering Tom Waterhouse and Ladbrokes, and 1 in 5 looking at William Hill. However, after the research phase, both Sportsbet and TAB had grown their final preferences. So they acquired almost everyone who did not have an initial preference, and they're also managing to capture some people who initially preferred some of the other brands. So we really need to get in and understand what's happening in that research phase that's enabling Sportsbet and TAB to acquire that share. On the flip side of that, though, it is absolutely possible to acquire initial preferences from Sportsbet and TAB, and it all starts with search. So as we mentioned, 41% initially preferred Sportsbet or TAB. 94% of those people then went to search, and 88% of them did not search for branded keywords of Sportsbet or TAB. So there is opportunity to acquire them at that point. Only 53% of them then visited either sportsbet.com.au or tab.com.au. And 37% of those people who initially preferred Sportsbet or TAB ended up choosing a different brand as their final preference. So actually 71% of those people did choose a different brand, but quite a large portion of them did go from Sportsbet or TAB to the other. But as you can see, 37% did choose one of the other brands. So it is definitely possible to acquire people who initially prefer those brands, and it's important to look at the offers and the messages that we're putting out in search. Okay, so which brands are managing to cut through these initial preferences? So when someone initially preferred Sportsbet, this is where they ended up finally preferring. So Sportsbet did manage to hold on to quite a lot of their initial preferences, almost 3/4 of them. Some went to TAB, some to the William Hill Group, and Ladbrokes also capturing some of that market. On the flip side, TAB, they about almost 1 in 2 actually chose a different brand, quite a large portion of them going to Sportsbet. And what we can see there is that Sportsbet are actually acquiring more of TAB's initial preferences than vice versa. But again, we can see Ladbrokes and William Hill Group brands appearing there. Also wanted to look at where Sportsbet acquire their final preferences from. So we can see that they have acquired some from TAB, also from Ladbrokes, and 28% of people who finally preferred Sportsbet did not have an initial preference. So during the research phase, they've really been able to position themselves as the clear choice there. Likewise for TAB, 36% of their final preferences did not have an initial preference. So one of the things we're able to do in the digital marketing effectiveness is identify which brands our participants have an account with or are existing customers. And this enables us to understand what are the tendencies for those customers. So here looking at Sportsbet, whilst of the people who have an existing account with Sportsbet, only 51% initially preferred them. 23% said they had no preference. On the flip side, looking at TAB, only 34% of their customers initially preferred them and 29% had no initial preference. When we asked them why they had no initial preference, 42% of the TAB customers who had no initial preference said it was because they generally just picked the best offer, whereas it was slightly less for Sportsbet customers who had no initial preferences. So when we have a look at this, TAB customers are more likely to just pick the company that puts the best offer out. They also consider more brands than Sportsbet did. And the brand that is being considered the most by Sportsbet and TAB customers is Ladbrokes. So there's a huge opportunity here for Ladbrokes to try and cut through the top 2 existing customer base. So how is Ladbrokes managing to do that? So when we asked why people initially preferred Ladbrokes, the top reason they stated was because they'd recently seen a promotion or advertising campaign from them. So 47% of everyone who initially preferred Ladbrokes stated that reason. If I can add some context here, when we look at the industry average, I've recently seen a promotion or advertising campaign was ranked as the fourth most popular reason and only 24%. So Ladbrokes absolutely over-indexes for this. The reasons stated as why people shortlisted Ladbrokes, 51% said they're familiar with their name, they look easy to use, and I saw them in a search engine. Again, over-indexing for this compared to the industry, but really highlighting here that whilst for other customers, the main reasons they are initially preferred or shortlisted is due to an existing relationship or trust, Ladbrokes advertising is really cutting through and getting them into the shortlisting phase. Having said that, 47% who initially preferred Ladbrokes ended up choosing Sportsbet or TAB, and the reasons they stated for switching was because they found the Sportsbet website visually appealing and because they trust TAB. So whilst the strategies are really working for Ladbrokes, it's really important to focus on the trust element to really ensure that our marketing dollars are working for us and getting those final preferences. Wanted to quickly look at the William Hill Group as a whole. So these are figures from June to August last year, and what we're able to do within the DME is look at the customer journey. So here we're looking at brand recall, whether they visited your website, whether you were shortlisted, and how many times you were finally preferred. So from June to August last year, the William Hill Group held 23% of all final preferences, and you can see the Sporting Bet brand performing really well for them there. If we have a look at the most recent 3 months, we can see that the William Hill brand is now holding 13% of final preferences, so we have seen a 10% drop there. And the William Hill brand, as we mentioned previously, hasn't managed to build back up to what the Sporting Bet brand was at this stage. So whilst the Tom Waterhouse and Centrebet brands are still active, they are starting to drop off and become less relevant than the William Hill brand is growing. So I wanted to jump in and have a look at why this might be. And for that period, if we have a look at the top reasons why people did choose Sporting Bet as their final preference, the website was visually appealing was the most popular answer. Over the past 3 months, the most popular reason why people have chosen Sportsbet has been because they found the website visually appealing. So that answer for William Hill is much further down. So we can see that potentially the website is having a big impact as to why the Sportsbet brand is acquiring some of that share that lost by Sporting Bet. Now, these are the scores from our digital sales effectiveness and split up across the customer journey online on the website. And we can see here that for initial engagement, Sportsbet and Sporting Bet, at this time that we ran the study, Sporting Bet was still the brand that was live, did have the highest score for their initial engagement. So during that research phase, their strong performance on site is really helping to drive those final preferences. Just jumping in a little bit deeper, so we can see here that so in the blue we've got the scores for Sportsbet against the industry average, and we can see that they are definitely over-indexed compared to the industry average, and their homepage did outperform all of the competitors for initial impressions. TAB also performing strongly, and they actually were the market leader for appears to me needs. So we ask our participants a question when they first hit the homepage whether they feel this site would cater to them if they were looking to place a bet, and whether it would appear to meet their needs, and TAB was the market leader here, but taking an extremely different approach to some of the other brands with a much leaner and less cluttered homepage. However, when we look at the overall journey on site, TAB's web performance and score does drop off after initial engagement. So it's really important for TAB to look at those steps further down the funnel and really ensure that they're providing a good experience so that they can capture those transactions. Okay, so quickly recapping, so Sportsbet and TAB are absolutely capitalising on the current brand transitions and consolidations that are happening, but it is possible to pull away some initial preferences from those two brands, and leakage starts in search, so it's really important to make sure we're getting those offers right. Challenger brands doing quite well in terms of consideration and awareness, but really need to understand how they can translate that to final preference. Ladbrokes advertising is performing really well, but again, need to just understand how we can translate that to final preferences and potentially look into the customer experience on the website and see how that's contributing. William Hill, again, currently not performing at the rate that Sporting Bet was, but some really good strong signs in terms of awareness and consideration. And finally, TAB customers or customers with an account at TAB are less loyal than Sportsbet, so some opportunity there for some of the other brands to attack TAB customers. So I'll just hand over to Shay and he will tie us up for today.
Great, thanks Leah. I know it's a bit of an effort. Leah came out of the cold this morning, so she's pushed through well, champion. So folks, just quickly, obviously we're just giving you some high-level results from the overall digital effectiveness program. There's a lot more under the bonnet to show. We'd welcome any inquiries of those brands that are currently not engaged. Just want to make everyone aware that that digital sales effectiveness module in the overall program will be running again this month, towards the back end of this month, and that'll include the mobile sales effectiveness. Again, that's mobile web sales effectiveness. And also just to let everyone know that this month we'll also be including the recently launched UBet into the program as well, because they hadn't launched at the time of the last data run. So it'll be interesting to see how that work has sort of transpired in terms of customer expectations and how that translates against their competitor set as well. So look, we'll close off from there. My details there below. Most of the attendees and companies online today we're in discussions with, or our clients. So look forward to inquiries. Any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at shay.carbos@globalreviews. With my mobile number there as well. And I hope everyone has a successful Spring Racing Carnival ahead. All the best.